Before we get into the specific details of each instrument category, let's go over the general options that govern how our instruments will respond to our MIDI devices. If you click Options below an instrument in the multi-rack, you can set very specific instructions as to how your instrument will function according to the parameters you set. First off is the key range. If you want to limit the key range of your instrument, this is where you can define the lowest and highest key that will trigger a sample. If we click the Learn button, then all we have to do is hit a low key and a high key on our keyboard, and now the range has been set. Now notes outside of this range will not sound when played. You may also set this manually. Next, we have our velocity curve settings. This is where you define how your instrument will respond to your touch. If you want a straightforward normal response to your touch on the keyboard, then the linear response does just that. To the right of that is the exponential response curve, which will increase velocity exponentially to the amount of pressure you apply. So if you have a light touch and want your notes to be played at a higher velocity, then click this button. This will turn a mezzo piano attack into a forte and sometimes louder. The button to the right of this is the logarithmic response curve. I use this one frequently because I can be a heavy player on my keyboard, and this response curve adjusts the velocity accordingly. It functions in the opposite way of the exponential response curve. We then have the fixed velocity curve, where you determine in the max field what velocity you want your samples to play back at. All you have to do is click and drag in the max field, and your samples will play back at that velocity. You can also set the lowest and highest velocities allowed during performance by setting these two fields. If you set the minimum number to a number higher than 1, then all notes that you play at a velocity lower than this will be brought up to the minimum velocity you set. Same goes for the max velocity. If you set the max lower than 127, then all notes played at a velocity higher than this number will be brought down. The velocity volume parameter also determines the percentage of velocity to volume. So try messing around with this function until you find a response you enjoy. Next to our velocity options is our pitch bend range options. This all has to do with how your instrument responds to your pitch bend wheel. If the two knobs are zeroed out in the middle, then your instrument will not respond to any wheel action. If you want your instrument to move down a full octave, then move the wheel down all the way. If you want your instrument to move down only a half step, then set it to -1. The same goes for moving the wheel up. Say I want my notes to modulate a minor third up, then I choose 3 for 3 half steps. So my notes get played a minor third up when I move the wheel all the way up. This is great for synths. Transpose is a very useful parameter. Say you are not the best piano player in the world, but you can play pretty well in the key of C. But you are writing a piece in the key of C sharp. That's a difficult key to play in, even by professional standards. So what do? Let's set our semitone parameter to 1 for 1 half step. And voila, when you play in the key of C, it sounds in C sharp. You can set the semi and octave parameter either up or down for transposition changes. Tuning is very interesting. The folks at Native Instruments were able to emulate historical temperaments and have included them as an option for your tuning. First off is equal temperament, then pure. It might be useful to research these temperaments to learn their histories before experimenting with them and wondering why your instrument sounds so out of tune. Randomize does exactly what it says it does. If you toggle this function to on, then you can choose how random playback will be. You can get pretty wacky by setting these parameters very high. But Randomize has a practical function too. An example of this would be to set your volume, velocity, and pitch to about 9 o'clock when recording drums. This could give your drum playback a more human feel instead of a quantized feel. That's it for our performance view options. Please complete the following assignment.